after I finished high school, I had a chance of choosing what to study. And I decided that if I want to grow in this profession, if I want to become a more professional journalist, then probably I have to go studying communication science. And I want to tell you that it wasn't the best pick for me. And if you are considering to become a journalist, then I think the best advice that I could give you is to focus early on what's interesting to you specifically, because you're going to learn writing, you're going to learn presenting, or it's going to be your talent from the very start. But what you will gain from more is by becoming a specialist and an expert in some way. So choosing focus is something that I would advise you to do. For example, when I started out, I wanted to write about theater and culture because I was very passionate about these things. But as I went along, I saw that my editor gave me more social issues to be writing about, and that's how eventually throughout the years I got more interested in politics, and more specifically geopolitics. And this is something that is my expertise in many ways today, that I'm also passionate about and that I'm focusing on during my second degree, which I'm hopefully getting in a few days in political science here in Latvia. And I also wanted to stress that during my studies, because I wasn't enjoying studies as much as I hoped I would be, I was building a network and participating in all there is that I could see as an opportunity at that time. By building a network, I mean that I would be participating in conferences, in events, and in exchange opportunities between international students, because that's how I expanded my experience and network that I found very useful afterwards. And if you have any questions, very specific, where you can find opportunities for young journalists and young media makers, not only Erasmus projects, but also some transnational organizations that are working with young media makers around European countries or around the world, then you can ask me that later. And here in the pictures, you can see some of those events. For example, on the right corner in the bottom, that was an international conference with journalists also from Afghanistan, from Myanmar, from all kinds of countries. And I keep in touch with these people even now. Yeah, and that was in 2015, I think. And today, for example, when I have to or decide to report on a certain country in the world, I can already think back, hey, I have this guy from Afghanistan that I know, and I can reach out to him, and he can maybe connect me to other people in that country to understand better what's going on there. So networking is very important in this profession and in general, of course. So along the way, I always also did side jobs, not only because it's important to earn your own money, but also because it helps to develop all kinds of skills. And as I said, I get really lucky because I chose journalism, and in a way it chose me that it suited me so much that I stayed in this profession. And it's been around 10 years, and I have never looked back, or I have not considered anything seriously enough to turn away from this career path. But side jobs always help me to just see what else is out there. And I can just name you some most interesting jobs that I did. For example, I worked as a mascot and I entertained kids. And then I worked for a bank during all kinds of events where I was just, helping out with some stuff that they could give to young people that they attract for certain projects. And I never regret that, because I have contacts now in different fields, and also I develop other skills, which is always useful. And yeah, one other point that I wanted to mention is that it's very important as you go through different internships and you meet different people in different fields, it's important to keep in mind that people always talk. And I understand this more and more throughout the years, that it's not only a local thing or a regional thing, it's a global thing in many ways. Because as I've expanded my network of journalists around the world, I understand that I have people in common with a lot of people in a lot of different countries. And if you, that will be in the part where I talk about lessons learned, but if you want to be successful in a certain career path, it's always good just to be transparent and honest, and just keep in mind that it's a small world in many ways. Here's the part where I talk about the BAFF professional internship program. That's something I applied for during my last year of bachelor degree. And here are just some tips in this slide that I kept in mind before I went to the US. I was in Washington, D.C., and before I left Latvia, I made a promise to myself that I'm going to be present in the experience that I'm going to be having there, and I'm going to be open to all there is, and I'm not going to look at other things during that time. And this is the mindset that I also had during my studies. I wanted to mention before, when I was applying for all the conferences and projects, I was actually the only one in my course in bachelor's who was doing that. Our professor was giving us all kinds of advices. You know, there are these international journalists coming. You should apply for this or that. And if there are so many things that are happening on the side, and it's sometimes easy maybe to say, okay, there's going to be another opportunity. I'm not going to take this one. But if you really, really want to succeed in a certain career that you choose, it's better to take all those opportunities and be present in many ways. Yes. There's something else I wanted to say, but I keep forgetting. So more about my professional experience in Washington, D.C. I worked for J-Bank. It's not a bank. It's a joint Baltic American National Committee. Basically, it's a political lobbying organization through which interests of Baltic diaspora are represented in the U.S., in the U.S. Congress, administration, State Department, and other important organizations that can be lobbied. And in a way, lobbying is similar to journalism, because you are networking all the time. You are reporting to what you saw, to conversations that you had with certain people. But at the same time, it's very different, because in journalism, you take all sides and you report on everything as objectively, neutrally, and all of that. Whereas in lobbying, you're very certain of certain points that you want to push, that you're representing, and you're working in only that field. But this experience was spectacular. It was amazing because, as I said before, it's important to see different fields, different professions, and try them out to understand them, right? And this gave me access, insider access to political atmosphere and people and networks in the US that I could not have gotten if I was there as a journalist, asking a question, not talking off the record about certain things that we're just about to happen. So this insider knowledge was very, very important, and it keeps on giving even today. And BAFF professional experience was a year of opportunities and luck. Opportunities might always be there, but luck is something that comes unexpectedly. For example, here in these photos, you can see asking me a question at the White House when Donald Trump was meeting with the 3 Baltic presidents. And this is one of the many events where I also had luck and opportunity as a journalist to express myself that I did not expect would happen. And in many ways, there were a lot of circumstances that just fell into the right place. At the same time, you never know if it's luck or if it's something that brought you there systematically. But sometimes I think it's good to call it just luck. Also, what I learned and did while I was in the US, that building bridges and networking, as I already mentioned many times, it's one of the most important things, because I did not only mingle with American journalists and lobbyists and politicians and other people that were interesting to me professionally and in many ways also personally because of similar interests that we all have, but also building bridges with those who are representing our countries, Baltic countries there in the US, and also with diaspora. Because after I returned back, I've never really felt that I have fallen out of this international atmosphere. And it's a very good feeling that it feels that we're one society. It's not like, okay, we have this society here in Latvia, and to us these things are important, but I'm part of this society that has no borders, and we keep on networking and connecting regularly in many ways. And for example, after I returned to Latvia, some American Latvians invited me to give lectures in their summer camp the next summer. So that's only one of the ways how this relationship can show itself. So networking again. Where is my career now, and where is it going? I'm actually answering certain questions that I was given to before this presentation. That's why they're very specific. After I returned from the US and I had gained this experience, which was not fully journalism, because it was like taking a little break and cheating in a way for a year on journalism a bit, as I said, because while it was similar, it wasn't the same. After I returned, I decided that I wanted to stay faithful to journalism, and I started to work as a freelancer for different media here in Latvia, and also for some in the US. If you want more specific information, you can ask me later on how to get in touch, not only with local media and international media. That's some very specific knowledge, but someone who's interested in reporting could be interested, yeah. And I also started studying because when you're freelancing, it's a bit easier to get a master's degree also at the same time. And I also decided that once I came back, I kept on working for a while as a freelancer, but I decided to settle down about a half a year ago and start working for Latvian national television, which has been a good choice in many ways, because it is nice to be in your profession at the same time, to feel like you're working for your country. And if some of you have this urge, I don't know, I've always had it, that I want to do something good for my country in a way that I see impact. So basically you have to either be a bureaucrat or, or a doctor, or to see that you're working for your country, not for a certain company through which maybe something can be realized. So it's a fulfilling job in many ways in that sense. And as I already mentioned, I'm always staying in touch with the global network that has been building since about 10 years. And it is always helping me throughout my reporting, as I already mentioned. And tips for success and lessons learned. I think it is important to do something that gives you butterflies in many ways. And it hasn't always been easy to do everything in this profession. And I'm not saying I'm an artist where, I play a violin or I paint every day and it just gives me so much joy that I don't know where to put it. Of course, it has been hard. And there are also aspects of this profession that are sometimes not as easy, but it does make me happy in many ways. And journalism is something where you can choose parts of it where you feel happy, and because it's so wide. As I said, you can report on sports or on politics. You can do that for TV, where you work with video and voice and all kinds of stuff, or you can just write or work for radio. There are so many aspects of it. And another tip is never stop learning. It's a saying that probably everyone has heard, but there's just no end point at any there's no end point. And especially in journalism, if you choose this profession, every day is going to be a challenge in many ways. And you're going to have to jump in different topics and different countries and different problems. And you're going to have to become as big of an expert as you can during that short period of time. Because you have, as I mentioned in the beginning, this responsibility to the audience that you're giving this information to. And as a journalist, you don't have to necessarily be an expert in everything. It's amazing if you're an expert in, at least one thing that I also said, but you have to be ready to take up this challenge and to learn all the time. And another tip that I might give to you that might be useful is that see the world as your playground, and that goes together with the open-mindedness wherever you go. And especially when I went to the US, there are all kinds of people that I had never met before. There are all kinds of opportunities that I had never had before. And it's just keeping in mind all the time that there are different paths that different people have gone, and different experience and different also traumas that people are bringing to the table, right? And just being understanding and playful in a way, and just see how it goes at the same time. Not losing yourself. And also being present always is something I have also mentioned, that when you're doing something, this has helped me a lot. This is something that my dad always used to say, that when you're doing something, just really do it. And if you decide to not do it, then just don't, and don't think about it. And it has helped me in many ways. wherever I go, I just try to keep in mind, okay, this is my life, this is it, this is what I'm doing, and this is the most important thing right now because this is what I'm doing, right? And another thing I wanted to write in the end is that I've learned to love my country and this region more through experience of going to foreign lands and to while meeting foreign people, because it's so important to go out, and it's very important to meet all those people that I mentioned. But it's important to bring this experience back, and it's important to implement it here because this is it. This is the in my opinion, there's no better place than the Baltics, and it's nice that we have this land, this our culture that we can develop and we can invest in, and in a way we can see the impact very quickly. Because I've spoken to a lot of my friends who are journalists in other countries or are trying or aspiring to become journalists, and they're my age. And it is a lot harder, and the same goes for other professions. Whereas here in Latvia, if you want to do something, if you want to be good in your profession, you do it, you invest in that, and you can actually see the result. And I think I've said some things, and I think I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Anna. That was very interesting story and inspiring, really. To sample how we can feel that you really enjoy what you are doing and love your job. So this was really wonderful. And we have many questions already. So yeah, maybe some technical things you can stop share. Okay, you can put the last slide as well, just to be more comfortable. And let's quickly go through the questions. So the first one we received is journalism different around the world as a field? What do you think?
Around the world?
Yes.
Yes, this is something that I was thinking about actually this presentation, because I was preparing for a question about the importance of journalism today because it's digital age and stuff like that. And I was thinking about this question in a way that as long as there's going to be a democratic society, there's going to be the need for journalists. And in that way, we can say, you know, as long as there's democratic society, there's journalism. Whereas if you go to other countries that are not as free, let's say that, there's much less space for journalism, and that's where it gets different. For example, that's one of the reasons why you cannot apply all laws and regulations to all journalists and their practices around the world. For example, when I speak to my colleagues from Russia, their experience is very different. And many of my friends also in Belarus are working through mediums that are not officially recognized sometimes, and they're working in the shadow of you know, being scared of prosecution in many cases, whereas in more democratic countries we can feel much more free. And of course journalism is very different in also ways. Maybe I'm mentioning all the worst examples, but for example, in Mexico, there are certain issues that you just cannot report on, especially the ones related to cartels, which is a big problem in that country. So you can do everything but that, right? Whereas in more democratic countries, as I said, it's it's much more free.
Thank you. And the next question we received you mentioned that you have had a lot of luck during your career. What do you think, which is more important for the successful career, self-belief or luck?
I think this is a very philosophical question, right? But I think it goes hand in hand in many ways, because I think that I got so lucky, and I do think it was luck, especially during that year in the US, just because I was ready for that and because I believed, and sometimes I maybe wasn't believing in myself as much, but I was taking a chance and hoping for the best in many ways. For example, I can describe some situations. I was 21 or 22 when I went to the US, and I had worked in my field for a while, but I wasn't, a professional 30-something experienced person. And on one of the first days, I had to go to the US Congress to speak with some of the most influential and important people in the world, and to tell them why it's important to, support this or that bill, because it's going to be important for the Baltic region. And at that point, I think I had hard time believing myself that I'm at the right place at the right time, and that I'm experienced and that I have enough knowledge to do this job. But I was taking, the risk to pretend to myself and to make the best that I could. And that's where I think these lucky situations start, where you take the risk, and then one after another, you just, end up in certain situations that I might call luck, but maybe in a way it was just, taking the risk and trying to believe in yourself at some point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the next one, do you have some tips for letting the other person open up more while in interview? So other person to be more open.
This is a very good question, because it is truly an art. And I have had friends who are not journalists who have called me out when I'm using phrases that they consider that journalists use. For example, this phrase, right? You can trust me on this, and it's very important that you tell me this story right now. and I consider this to be a normal thing to say, right? It's like an icebreaker, or just to make the other person feel more comfortable. But I've had at least 2 friends who have told me, Anna, why are you using this on me? And I'm like, I'm just talking, right? So of course there are things that you can be doing, but not all of them are, like written down. Okay, before interview, I'm going to be doing this. It's more of like emotional intelligence in a way, or just experience by being with people. And this is something that also from my personal side, I was very shy when I was younger, and I had real problems just looking people in the eye. I would just start crying, just tears starting falling from my eyes. And I worked really hard not to be shy. And one of the things was just, going out there and speaking to more people, just meeting new people and trying out different ways how to communicate. And that's how you get to, I got to understand more of what people are trying to say with their body language, and when they're uncomfortable, where they might be coming from. So that's when you can try to relate to their experience. In a way, mirroring is very important, and that's something I always do just naturally. If the person is acting in a certain way, I act in a certain way, so that the person feels like we're more similar.
Mm-hmm. So the next one, I think you mentioned that it's very detailed question, that how to get in touch with local as well as international media. But maybe this is, well, if it's too much in detail, we can answer it later.
I can send more information maybe on networks that I've been part of. For example, European EYP, European Youth. Why did I forget? European Youth, not Parliament, but well, EYP for journalists. That's one of the organizations that I've been part of. But also how to get in touch with the local media. It's not as hard because especially if you're at the university, that's one of the things why you might want to choose studying communication science against what I said, because then your professors will be also journalists. They can give you an internship at the local media. Also, you can, just write to any editor, and because Latvia is so small and sometimes they just need people who might be working for them, they might actually reply to you and give you a job. How to get in touch with international media, that's mostly based on networking and staying in touch with those networks. But also you can just, write to any media if you have a pitch and an idea for something, but that's a bit harder. So having a good network, having people who speak for yourself also, that's an important thing. For example, a conference that I attended in 2016 in Italy, it was International Journalism Festival, which happens every year, and you can apply for that as a volunteer, by the way, also a good thing. I met some people there, and they still keep on writing to me occasionally, just, hey, there's this project in Barcelona and this in Paris, and we need some people, and there's not a lot of money, but you can do this, and that's more exposure. And once you get exposure, it just keeps on coming in many ways. So it's just a constant work, but if you want to start doing that, then call me.
Okay, and where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years from now?
It's a hard question in many ways, because I think it's important to plan in the long term, and I have done that in many ways, that I keep this grand vision of where I see myself. At the same time, I stay flexible. Because, for example, coronavirus arrived and we never thought it would, right? And there are so many aspects of many people's lives that changed very much. And because of that, I changed my outlook often. But in the grand picture, I see myself being a journalist, and probably in Latvia, and if no, not Latvia, but Latvian television, because I've found that I really enjoy TV format, and if everything works out, I would love to keep on growing in this organization.
Thank you. And the next question has 2 parts. So where would you suggest looking first when searching for an internship? What sources, what organizations, and how do you find your freelance clients?
I think it goes together with the question that I answered before. And those are more specific questions that as I said, it's part of building your network and staying in touch with those people. But finding an internship, it's maybe not the best way, but also through people, I think it's one of the most powerful ways. At the same time, I have just written to editors, and they have invited me, and we have started some projects together. But when I look back, I think most of my jobs have been through people that saw me in either like a youth project where I was a volunteer, and then they invited me, or I started working for a national newspaper because my professor was editor there, one of my professors, and she was like, hey, you want to come along? And that's how it happened. Yeah, so basically just putting yourself out there, meeting people, best meeting those people through conferences, projects, and programs, and yeah.
I think you answered already the next question about building networking, so we will move forward, how stressful the journalist job is for you? Do you often feel that some topics take a mental toll and are hard to leave behind the office? So about the stress and
I think there are two parts of this. One is the amount of stress and challenges, and the other one is about leaving some things emotionally far from you. And stress is something that it's gonna always be there. You're just gonna have to get used to that, and to maybe get even hyped for that, to get adrenaline from that in a good way, that makes you keeps you going. Because stress is every day, where there's deadlines, where there's this limited amount of time, and uncertainty, because news is not predictable. For example, if I go to work now, I might see, okay, these are two issues that are most important to cover today, and let's pick this in this way, and then something happens. I can share my experience on my first days at the television at the beginning of this year. I had never worked for TV before, only for TV format on online media, which is pre-recorded, and it's nothing like having the stress about stuff being aired very, very soon. And it was my first day, and the plane, which was flying from Tehran, and it was about to fly to Ukraine, it fell down. Later we found out that it was shot down, and it was my first day when everyone was just going crazy, right? And my editor was like, okay, you need to cover this. And I had never done this. You need to find the video, you have to write the text, you have to search for all the sources, you have to package in a good way, and also I also had to go to the green screen and do something with my hands and show stuff, and and if you've never done it, you just have to do it. It's a huge amount of stress, but you're there, and you somehow just cope, and you say to yourself, okay, this might not be the 100% that you do as a professional now, but this is the 100% that you can do at this moment, and that's why you're not going to be feeling bad about this, or so that's about the stress, and you grow tolerance for stress. But about leaving things behind, of course, every day, especially during catastrophes like this, the plane crash and COVID and other events which are also locally happening. Of course, I see all kinds of violence, corpses, all kinds of stuff in videos that I have to watch every day, and I have to read about and see. And this is very personal for each person, how they cope with these things, with these emotions. I try to just, in many ways, I just try to not let it in and look at it not cynically, but just distantly. It is happening. These are the numbers. This is what it is. I'm not gonna think about the faith, of those families who are involved, and I'm just not gonna let myself dwell on these emotions. Of course, there are stories and reports where you have to dive deeper, and you have to where you're, for example, making a story about that family, not the events as a whole. Then it's a whole other thing, and there's a lot of psychological work that you should be doing, and healthy habits that you should be keeping, but that's another lecture. I think on all kinds of coping mechanisms.
Yeah. And since Anna is limited in her time, so the last question, do you have any tips for building social media platform?
Yeah, this is something that I haven't been as involved in, so I cannot tell you anything about algorithms or how to get followers or stuff like that. At the same time, I have been keeping my social networks, and they have been to some extent without professional help successful. And I think it's just being present, the same as with people, keeping in touch with people. But when you have a social media account, you keep in touch by making yourself be seen, about the work you do, and about your activities, and tagging people, I guess, using hashtags. I guess those are good things. I use my social networks basically for presenting my work, and in that way, the people who are abroad, and also my foreign friends, they see that I'm active in this profession, and that's how they know that if I need a journalist in Latvia, I know Anna is there, and that's important.
Thank you, Anna. So very good feedback we received. Thank you for presentation. This talk gave me more clarity and inspiration. Thank you. And so it is really inspiring what you were sharing with us. Thank you so much. And thank you for questions as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna. And
thank you. Good luck in your career and everything, and keep in touch with BAFF. There are so many beautiful, nice, inspiring, great people who are not only professionally interesting, but also inspiring and just good friends. And I just advise all of you to keep in touch with this network. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.